Okay, limit break is ready. Let's give it a go.
What?
Oh, no way. Come on, man. That's so freaking cool. Why is this just a PvP ability? Why can't we do awesome stuff like this in PvE? Come on. Hello, my friends. I'm the Synodic Scribe, your local lore mask, and today I want to talk about PvP.
Too late. What? There he is. Where? There. What, behind the rabbit? It is the rabbit. You silly sod! What?
Yeah, technically this isn't my first ever PvP video, so it can't be said I'm suddenly going off the deep end all of a sudden. In fact, today's video loops back to something I talk about very often, the relationship between gameplay and lore. I've gone on record saying that what you're capable of in-game is a pale reflection when compared to just how diverse and expansive the world of Final Fantasy XIV truly is. And since the MSQ never really encourages individuals to ask questions or wonder about certain things, most people don't. However, while the lore and gameplay will never be on equal footing, certain gameplay mechanics do inform us about the nature of certain abilities and powers within the 14 universe. So we'd be fools to completely ignore them. That's why, lately, I've noticed something I personally found to be very interesting. And that's the fact that PvP is steadily becoming very good at representing the jobs in Final Fantasy XIV. In some aspects, I'd say better than PvE. So, let's talk about that. Also, I'm going to bring up Endwalker stuff here, so if you're a stickler for spoilers, this is gonna get messy. This is your only spoiler warning. I don't know what else I can do. There's a lot of lore throughout the expansions, and I can't just not talk about them. But before I get started, I want to put out a little disclaimer. I did not make this video just to throw shade at the state of PvE. I say this because I know that it's a bit of a hot button topic to some people at the moment. Do I personally agree with or like the direction they've taken with some jobs and the homogenization of many abilities? No, not really. Which is why I'm kinda holding my breath for all you Astrologian and Dragoon mains out there. 12 only knows what the rework is gonna do to you all. However, at the end of the day, that's not what I'm here for. It's not what you're here for. We are here for the lore. So let's get right into it. Now, what we're about to discuss isn't exactly one-to-one in terms of lore accuracy, because I don't have a page or character explaining the finer details of the abilities in PvP to me. However, based on what we've already seen in-game, PvP has really stepped up and proven to know what the jobs are capable of as far as the actual lore is concerned. So let's have some fun with what we do know. And what I know for a fact is that the White Mage's Miracle of Nature is in fact completely lore accurate. For those of you not in the know, Miracle of Nature is a PvP spell White Mages can use to turn their targets into helpless little critters for a couple seconds. Kinda like how a Pomander of Witching works in the Deep Dungeon content. Now, some of you may be wondering how in the world could a spell like Miracle of Nature be completely lore accurate? And the answer is rather easily. Technically, a spell like Miracle of Nature would fall under the same category as the Transfiguration spell used by Y'shtola at the start of Endwalker. You know, the one that turned yourself and your friends into toads for a bit. This type of enchantment works by essentially smothering one's aether with magic, thus changing how they are perceived and interact with reality, if only for a moment. The biggest difference between Y'shtola's Toad spell and the White Mage's Miracle of Nature is that in the prior, the subject is willing, and in the latter, the subject is unwilling. To willingly accept an enchantment means that your body, or rather your aether, isn't going to fight it. But if the subject is unwilling, the duration of the spell is dramatically shortened, as the subject's essence will rage against the transformation. Now, before any of you get this spell confused with what happens to characters that are either transformed by primals, or the Tonberries from Nim, or altered like the Voidsent or Sin Eaters, know that Miracle of Nature or Y'shtola's Toad spell is like wrapping you up in a veil of magic that you can break out of. It's strictly a surface level influence, but turning into something like a Sin Eater isn't so pleasant, as it's more like an infection that attacks the core of your being and then starts to work its way outward. One is simply covering you up, the other is fundamentally changing your insides. But speaking of outside things influencing you, there's a lot of crowd control in PvP now, isn't there? One of these CC abilities takes the form of a hysteria created by Reapers and their limit break, Tenebrae Lemierum. This actually isn't the first time in the lore we hear of a spell or ability instilling irrational amounts of fear into a target. Dark Knights and their control over darkness have been historically known to cause unreasonable amounts of terror in their opponents, sometimes sending them into a fight-or-flight frenzy. Not only that, but even helpful abilities from a Dark Knight have been called unsettling due to their appearance and the odd sense of dread they can create. So it's totally normal for Reapers to tap into similar talents with their control over void magics. Though before we get too far away from Dark Knight, I want to draw attention to their PvP kit. At the moment of recording, a Dark Knight in PvP is technically trying to consume their own HP in order to deal more damage. Sound familiar? Indeed, traditional Dark Knights in the Final Fantasy franchise as a whole are usually consuming their own hit points in order to deal much higher amounts of damage than other jobs. Which means that the Dark Knight currently in PvP is closer to your usual Final Fantasy Dark Knight than the one you're playing in PvE at the moment. If you want to get historical about it, that is. Moving on, ninjas are absolutely crazy. In PvP, they're legitimately able to assassinate people, as in instant death. No counterplay, no tricks, you're just dead. It's kind of obvious why we can't have abilities that powerful in PvE, but it speaks to the job's talents as someone who's supposed to be able to go in for the kill when the moment presents itself, which is technically lore accurate. Same with Black Mage. Sure, the Black Mages we know and love are only ever really known for doing the big fire and ice boom boom during raids and stuff, but their ability to put any of their opponents to sleep speaks to their ability to inflict various status effects. Inflicting detrimental effects onto your targets was just as common as throwing fireballs back in the days of Mach. How else do you think they tamed and controlled so many Void Sent? And sure, sleep is still a spell in PvE, but most things in PvE are immune to the spell anyways. So when exactly was the last time you used it? And don't you dare lie to me. But the diversity doesn't stop at abilities. The jobs are entirely unique. Paladins are designed to protect their team and have no fear on the front lines. Meanwhile, warriors are eager to drag you around the map with ethereal chains and literally shatter your defenses with their savagery. Which is completely lore accurate despite how similarly the tanks have begun to play in PvE in recent expansions. For another example, look no further than the bards. In PvP, they're debuffing their enemies with their arrows and music just as much as they're buffing their allies throughout a battle. However, debuffs in Final Fantasy XIV have almost completely disappeared, and canonically, a bard's songs are known to do much more than simply make their friends fight harder. To drive home my point, does anyone remember back in A Realm Reborn when alchemists would make poison pots for raid teams? These status effect potions were left behind in ARR, and anything over level 50 is just immune to them now. If it sounds like I'm excited to discuss the PvP skills, it's kinda because I am. Sure, on the surface, the jobs only really have about 6 abilities and then their limit break. However, it's not the number of abilities that interested me. It's the ways in which they not only work, but also interact with each other. These things are happening in ways that logically they should be happening in PvE, but they're not. Mind you, I understand why this is. Nowadays, PvE fundamentally has a completely different direction and philosophy when compared to the days when A Realm Reborn was first released. Final Fantasy XIV has grown tremendously over the years, and as that number has changed, so has their vision for what the game should be and how it should entertain its audience. As such, the jobs and what their abilities have changed into over the years have come to match this change in climate. So, while I'm disappointed that the jobs in PvE don't quite feel like they're living up to their lore-based potential, I'm very glad that the design team behind PvP wasn't afraid to kinda go crazy and get creative with the various jobs and how they perform. Not only that, but by also adding new abilities that aren't even in PvE. And yet, these new skills and spells are still true to what they should be capable of in the lore. I could go on and break down every job, but I think you get the idea. As you have probably guessed, I've been playing a lot of PvP lately to earn tomestones and other things as we wait for the next patch to drop. But as I played through PvP on the large variety of jobs we have, I felt that each of them were more unique here than they have been in PvE for years. As a lore lover, I can't help but feel like we've lost something along the way. But never has that gotten in the way of me loving this game. And so I put the question to you, my friends. Even if you've never played PvP, simply based on what you've heard today, how do you feel about the current state of jobs and their abilities? Do you feel the jobs are living up to their potential, or that the developers could stand to go a bit more crazy in the future? As always, I expect you all to be cordial with one another. This is still a lecture hall. But after writing this script, I feel inspired to break down the various ways jobs have changed over the years and how that has affected their interpretation in the lore. If that's something you'd be interested in listening to, let me know, and I'll get right to work. But as always, I hope you all enjoyed today's analysis. So until next we meet, stay safe, my friends. Thank you all for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this video, why not subscribe and share this with your fellow adventurers? With your help, I'll try to reach out even further and bring even greater stories to you. Although, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my biggest contributors. A grand thank you to Rovakis, Potato, Burn My Pancakes, The Yellow Couch, Papaya Cyan, Sage Mouse, Volvalis Oma, Cizane, and Cat, with an additional nod to the scholarships on screen. Links to things like my Twitter and that of my channel artist Catty can be found in the description. Thank you all for your viewership as well as your support, and I hope all of you have a wonderful day. Class dismissed.